What's up, wizards? Welcome back to Across the Horizon, and we are now on episode and aphorism 7. So I will go ahead and get us started as I have been doing recently with Ashmond. And it is the mingled influences of the stars can be understood by no one who has not previously acquired knowledge of the combinations and varieties existing in nature.
Yeah, I think this kind of harkens back to our earlier discussion of Platonic ideas, and they're talking about the idea of something in mind, in the event. Really, there's really not a huge difference between the astrological, cycles and the things happening on Earth. They're connected by the fact that they're both produced or controlled or influenced or whatever by these underlying spiritual cycles, And so another thing, thinking about this was that I like to read the rulership lists. If you look at, I have these long traditional sources like Agrippa or Al-Biruni or whatever, Lilly, and they list all the things that are ruled by the planet. And it's I like to read that because it helps you understand the sort of nature of the planet. So, because typically what you say is, okay, Saturn has got these qualities, and then that means it rules, for example, Saturn rules things that are black or, don't smell good or solitary or whatever. It's also interesting to read the things and relate them back. One of the things that was interesting for me was that ducks, they're waterfall, right? And we actually took care of these wild ducks in Washington, D.C. So we spent a lot of time paying attention to them. And that actually helped me learn about the moon, right? Because the moon's sort of nature is, personality is very mysterious. The sun is very obvious, bright, it's the light of the day, but the moon is sort of inherently mysterious. So it's interesting understanding ducks as being a lunar, sort of thing. It's like cats are also ruled by the moon and also by Saturn. Both the moon because their eyes change, and Saturn because they're sort of melancholy. But I think that's that interchange back and forth between the natural things and then the planets, and particularly through that idea of rulership, is very useful to understand. You can understand the planets better if you understand the rulerships. You understand the things ruled if you understand the planets. And ultimately, they're tied together by the fact that they really are just the branches, right, of this underlying root, right? And the root is those spiritual influences, and you think of it in a Hermetic sense or Taoist sense. The Tao creates the one creates the duality, and then the duality creates the three, and then that creates the 10,000 things. And so, ultimately, when we see there's a tendency to think, oh, the stars are causing or influencing. It's it goes back the other way too. There's the material things themselves also have an influence on the planets and the stars, and ultimately, like I said, they're all unified. And that's the wise man is the one that understands these intricate and occult, which just means hidden, interconnections of things, which come about because they're essentially codependent arising, and also because they're connected that way. So I think this is a very interesting philosophical passage, and it points up some really interesting truths about the nature of reality.
So one of the things that I think is interesting about following the planetary lists is, here, we'll use an example for this. So for alchemy, something that I've always kind of wanted to get into, and I've gotten a little bit into laboratory alchemy, but not very, very much. What I found a little bit more appropriate as an entry point was traditional herbalism. And Matthew Wood wrote a book that is traditional Western herbalism. He's a very well-known herbalist, but he talks about plants within their systems. And of course, he's quoting people like the eclectics, but he also goes back to Culpeper a lot. And you can start to play with the planetary things. So you see how the plants interact with each other. And that's also how they interact with the humans in following the herbalistic models. So you have things like trees being associated with Saturn. Now, different, like fruiting trees are associated with Venus, but if you look at the role of trees in the forest as being the backbone and the limiter in the forest, they're performing a Saturnian function. So you can kind of start to break down every system into the different planetary components based on function. And you do get into the Platonic ideals with this, because again, you're looking for relationships and you're trying to define the relationships between each of these things, recognizing these categories of relationship, which are represented by the planets. So it all comes up together because it, with Ashman, again, I'm going to go ahead and review it real quick. You can't really understand the mingling unless you understand the way that these combinations exist in nature. So if you understand the natural systems in place that are guarded by these, or that are represented by these things, then you can start to see the way that their influence from the outside of these things impacts these more complex systems.
Right. I mean, I guess I would say is that there is always this view of causality that, that Mars is like beaming something at me and that's why I'm having trouble, he's on transit and he's messing me up. It's like, I'm pulled more to a view of that they're all cycling together. And so again, if you understand the interactions of the natural things, you can understand the corresponding interactions of the planets, the aspects or the house placement or whatever, whatever factors you're looking at. Because all these systems are interrelated, all these systems reflect each other, and everything is one great sympathetic, chain of influences and cycles. So I think that really does, like I said, point to these underlying unity that is the nature of spiritual unity. That really is the causal link for astrology.
Absolutely. So that was a quick one.
Yeah, there's not so much to say about that one.
Nope. So maybe we'll have a longer discussion next week then. So see you guys and gals and everyone soon.